.45 Auto versus .357 Magnum in full-size handguns. What's the advantage and disadvantage between the two of these? I'm going to go through a list of advantages and disadvantages, and the list where I pretty much say this is an advantage generally does say that it's a disadvantage to the other, but not always. Now, the first thing I'm going to say here is this is going to be a lot of revolver versus auto debate here, but a good deal of it is also going to be caliber specific. It's not just auto versus revolver. There's some caliber specific issues with the .357 Magnum and with the .45 Auto that I want to discuss and go over. First thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you that this gun's unloaded here. Completely unloaded. I have a couple rounds of .357 Magnum on the table right here. This gun, its chamber is clear, but it does have a full magazine in it. And you'll notice full metal jacket, and there's a reason why I have that in there, and I'll discuss that in a little bit. Some advantages and disadvantages between the .357 Magnum full-size gun and a .45 Auto for a full-size gun. And for the record, this is a Smith & Wesson 686 6-shot with a 4-inch barrel. This is a Glock Model 41 with a 5.3-inch barrel. Overall, these are full-size handguns. They're basically identical in size as far as overall size. Alright, what's an advantage of the .357? Let's go with this one first. The revolver .357 Magnum. First advantage is going to be reliability. You're always going to have a more reliable weapon when you're talking the revolver. You know, sometimes you can get some inexpensive revolvers that don't quite add up, and you have some very reliable automatic handguns that are pretty much 99.9% reliable. However, just a little bit more reliable with the .357 Magnum than a .45 Auto semi-automatic pistol. Just a little bit. That's advantage number one. Advantage number two is power. You just have a little bit more power, actually quite a bit more power with the .357 Magnum. You have a lot of muzzle energy, anywhere between 500 and 800 foot-pounds of muzzle energy out of a full-size .357 Magnum. 500 to 800. That's very significant. That's more powerful than most cartridges. So you definitely have an advantage with power in the .357 Magnum. Alright, next point is hand loading. How cost effective is it to hand load with these? Quite simply, it is more cost effective to hand load the .357 Magnum. It does oftentimes take a little bit more gunpowder, but that's negligible on how much it costs more for the gunpowder. You know, maybe a half a cent more for the amount of gunpowder that's in each cartridge, or you know, it might not even be that. But the bullet weight is pretty significant. Generally, you're talking 38 caliber bullets to hand load. If you go with the low cost plated or low end jacketed bullet, you're talking maybe $12 for 100 of these 38 caliber bullets versus maybe $16 or $17 for 100 of these. Both pretty cost effective, but you just have a little bit more cost efficiency when you're reloading .357 Magnum versus .45 Auto. Next point is going to be concealability. This is a big one here. Concealability between the both of these. Now, I just had a comment from somebody today that said I was not in my right mind because I said that the revolver, in general, not full size, but just any revolver, was easier to conceal than a semi-automatic pistol. And generally, it might not necessarily be easier because the thickness of the cylinder is generally always going to be, you know, wider than the thickness of a semi-automatic pistol. However, the curves and lines in a revolver just blend right in with your body. You know, if you got this on the hip in some way, this right here doesn't poke into anything. It's very comfortable. As we're on a semi-automatic pistol, you always got something like this, whether you have a beaver tail or not, that's going to kind of jab into you. There's just no two ways about it. The revolver is a little bit more comfortable to carry, even if you think that the semi-auto is a better weapon and you carry that more. The semi-auto, the .357 is going to be a little bit more comfortable to carry. Another thing is just one solid piece. You know, it just feels like a solid piece that kind of just blends in with your body. There's nothing on it that moves when it's has pressure against it, against your body. Something like this, you know, you hear this sometimes when you're doing stuff. It's not one solid piece that just blends right into your body. So overall, I would say that the revolver is just a little bit more concealable and definitely more comfortable. So that's what you get there with that. Your next thing here is your long range ability with this. This has a much longer range. You can definitely hit a target at a longer range with something like this. You have that fixed barrel. That's an advantage to the 357 Magnum being in a revolver. And also, 357 Magnum is a much lighter bullet, moving much faster. Very easy to push one of these out a couple 100 yards and still be able to hit a man-sized target at that distance. 45 auto full-size handgun, you can do it, but it's certainly not going to be as effective, as accurate as it's not going to have the energy down range that the 357 Magnum does, and it's going to be much harder to do it. The bullet drop is going to be a lot more. So definitely long range with the 357 Magnum full-size handgun. The next advantage is going to be you have a little bit more ability to defend yourself against large and dangerous game, or to hunt with something like a 357 Magnum over the 45. Oftentimes you can get a hard cast 357 Magnum that's really going to have a lot of ability to punch through bone and take down a dangerous game with the right bullet. 45 auto can do it, but it's not really its big winning point. It's good for some things, but when you're talking maybe a brown bear or something, I mean, this is about the low end you'd want to go. A 45, it doesn't really have that bone breaking ability the way that the 357 Magnum hardcast does. So that's another thing right there, dangerous game. Next thing you're going to have is more penetration with the 357 Magnum and hard barriers. Punching through a car door, punching through light steel, punching through body armor. You're definitely going to have a lot more ability to do it with the 357 Magnum. Not only does it have more energy in general, but let's say both of these are very hard bullets, or full metal jacket bullets, and you not only having more energy on this, but it's skinnier. That's just simple math there. It's going to punch through something a lot better than something that's moving slower, less energy, and bigger around. It's a lot more material to cut through there. Next thing you're going to have, it's a little bit more cost effective to shoot this over the 45 auto. I know 45 and 357 Magnum ammo is pretty close, but you can download this to 38 Special. 38 Special in general is a little bit less expensive than the 45 auto, so that's an advantage right there. The next thing here, no manual safety. And you can take that as an advantage or a disadvantage. I'm just going to put that in there. They don't have them, and that can be an advantage for definitely quicker shots out of the holster. You don't have to flip something off. A lot of autos don't have them anyway, but a lot of them do, and that could be an advantage there. Next thing is going to be is the longevity of something like this. You get a 357 Magnum, you load it up, you set it in a drawer, pick it up 20 years later without touching it, it's probably still going to fire just fine, as where something like the semi-automatic is going to, if you got, especially with the magazine, you have a loaded magazine, all that spring tension down in there is going to compress that spring over a very long period of time. And what you get oftentimes, and this has happened in law enforcement, cops, they don't shoot their guns, and then one in the chamber will fire at a bad guy, and the next one, it just barely comes up and it'll jam the second round. So they get a failure to feed on round two because they're not exercising their springs and loading them regularly. So that's another thing that can definitely be an advantage to the 357 Magnum. You get that longevity. Next thing, more accurate. 357 Magnum is just going to be more accurate in general. You have better accuracy at any range with this fixed barrel, and definitely at long range it's punching those bullets out there further, so it's going to be more accurate than the 45. At close range, practical self-defense, really not going to be an issue, but overall you just got more accuracy with that 357 Magnum. Next thing, it's easier for a beginner to work something like this. The recoil of a 357 might be a little bit more intense than a 45. However, just being able to open it, one button, load it, close it, pull the trigger. Pretty simple. Any revolver is going to be a lot easier for a beginner to just pick up and use. So that's definitely an advantage for the 357 Magnum. It's just simpler for a beginner. So that goes over some of the advantages of the 357 Magnum as a revolver and as the cartridge itself. So let's go on to the 45 auto and talk about its advantages and disadvantages here. first obvious advantage here, you have more capacity. That's generally true in any modern 45 auto. Something like a Glock, basically all of them have 10 to 13 rounds. Other brands have similar capacity. Even when you go down to single stacks, the modern 1911s often have 8+1. So you're talking 9 rounds versus 6 or 7. So you got a little bit more capacity, and that's always a nice thing to have. The next thing is you have a lot of power without a lot of energy. And I say power kind of subjectively, rated on a muzzle energy scale. Yeah, it's not super powerful, but you have more ability oftentimes to stop an attacker with a 45 than what you do with a 9mm, despite the fact that it has the same energy. So you have a lot of knockdown power essentially for not a lot of energy. So you have power without too much power. Next thing here is going to be with a 45. I know this is kind of debatable, and this is not advice in any way, but what I had to do here, and I said I would explain this when I first started the video. This is loaded with Full Metal Jacket 45 ACP cartridges. The reason why this is loaded with that, and I have 2 other magazines in the house loaded this way, is because I shot up all of my defensive ammo by accident, and I didn't even have ammo. I had just enough bullets and primers and everything to load up enough ammunition for my gun here. But the thing is, Full Metal Jacket, it is fairly effective when you're talking a 45. You look at some of the stopping power charts, and you're talking around 65% one-shot stop. It's been pretty effective throughout the years when the military used it. It's just known to be a decent man-stopper even with Full Metal Jacket ammunition. And certainly you could use a lot of different cartridges with Full Metal Jacket, but if you had to take the cartridge that has probably the highest percentage of one-shot stops with a Full Metal Jacket that's recorded or a round nose in comparison, it's definitely a lot better with the 45 auto. It's one of the ones that will work fairly well with the Full Metal Jacket instead of a hollow point. And here's another thing I'm going to say. There are some people out there that prefer to use round nose bullets because they don't want to basically mangle somebody up. They don't want to kill somebody. They want to have a good amount of stopping power without ripping them to shreds with a hollow point. And I know that's not something I'm promoting, certainly not, but there are people out there, they want to have something that's going to hit with enough force to get somebody's attention, to possibly stop them, but without extensively damaging their tissue. And the 45 auto is again one of the cartridges that's capable of doing that. Next thing is it's more accurate with multiple shots. This right here, 357, even in a full-size gun, it has a lot of recoil, a lot of flash. So it's definitely harder to put multiple rounds on target with a 45. 45 is just a little bit of a push. You can manage that recoil and hit multiple shots on target pretty easily as comparison to the 357 Magnum. So that's definitely an advantage with that. The other thing here is with 45 auto hollow point ammunition, you have a little bit less chance of unintended overpenetration. You get hollow points now. When you do shoot Full Metal Jacket, it's going to penetrate as well as anything else. Full Metal Jacket 45, despite people saying it doesn't overpenetrate, it penetrates a lot, probably as much as 9mm. It'll punch through stuff like you wouldn't believe. But when you go to a hollow point, you have something that's going to reliably expand, and I would say you'd want something with a known soft alloy like a gold dot or a critical defense if you're worried about that, because once it hits something hard, it's going to shred up. So less unintended overpenetration through hard barriers through anything if you have a 45 versus something else. Probably go through a little bit less overpenetration with the right 45 versus the right 357 Magnum. Next thing you're going to deal with here is hearing damage. Less hearing damage with the 45 versus the 357 Magnum. I've shot 45s without hearing protection, and I've shot a 357 without hearing protection before, just to see what they're like. And one shot with the 357 Magnum, even outdoors, my ear was ringing for like 3 hours. I've shot 45 autos without hearing protection just to see what it's like, and it's really no more loud than a 9mm. There's not really a significant boom to it. Anything that you have labeled Magnum, it's just kaboom, and you feel that compression in your ear. 45 auto, just like 38 special 9mm, it's more of a snap sound. It's like a 22 but really loud. I mean, that's the way to compare it. 357 Magnum is like a rifle round going off. There's a kaboom to it that can really damage your hearing. So definitely a home defense. You're gonna have less hearing damage and just less distraction in general if you had to fire a weapon indoors versus the 357 Magnum. So you still got a lot of stopping power, less hearing damage. Another advantage here is most modern automatics, 45 caliber or any other caliber, you can mount a light on it very easily. Now there's advantages and disadvantages either way, and certainly a light on this is going to be a lot easier than a flashlight in one hand and a revolver in the other. Certainly you can do it, and there's definitely an advantage because you can have the light over here and your gun over here, and you know, if the other person's armed, they might shoot at your light versus, you know, my gun's over here, they're going to shoot over here, they're going to miss me and I can still shoot them. A light right on the gun, you're always going to have that light where you're at, but overall I'd say in general it's definitely an advantage to have a light on a gun versus not having a light on a gun. And your automatic, you're definitely going to have the ability to put a light on a gun. Next thing, faster reloads. That's been done to death. Yeah, you can slap a magazine in it out. You know, it's going to be a lot harder for the average person to do it on a revolver, especially one that's a rimmed cartridge revolver. You know, you're using speed loader, speed strip, whatever. Faster reloads with that 45 auto. Next thing, and I mentioned this with the revolver, but manual safety. I said no manual safety was an advantage on this, but a manual safety that's on a lot of autos, you could also say that's an advantage because it's just one more safety step when you're talking about concealed and carrying it. You could look at it either way, advantage or a disadvantage, but I'll just put it for argument's sake as an advantage if you did have a manual safety on a 45. Next thing, easier to shoot one-handed. This kind of goes hand in hand with the light thing, but in general, you pick up a semi-automatic, it's pretty easy to shoot it one-handed. It doesn't take much trigger pull. The average person really can't shoot this one-handed quite as easily. You know, it's okay, it can be done even if you have enough experience, but even Jerry Michalek, I'm guaranteeing if he picked up this, even though he's basically the revolver god known to man, he would shoot a semi-automatic better one-handed than a revolver. So that's just how it is. Easier to shoot one-handed. The other thing is here, the semi-auto, the 45 is easier to clean really well. You know, the thing is, most 45s, most semi-automatics are blued or black in some way, so you don't have a lot of stainless that you're like obsessing about. Something like this, yeah, it's harder to clean really well because you're going to want to get all the burn marks off it. In general, you can clean the revolver a little bit quicker, just a quick scrub down to, you know, make it work for function than you can this. But when you're talking really clean the thing really well, I mean absolutely perfectly, definitely a little bit quicker with the semi-automatic, and you know, it's not really caliber specific, but definitely a little bit quicker to clean it really well. Another thing, 45 versus 357, this is going to take abuse a lot better. Now if we're talking very light guns, like a light alloy frame revolver versus a very light gun like my pocket guns, that kind of goes back either way. But when you're talking big heavy guns, my airlight revolver, you could probably drop it on the cement and wouldn't damage it. This thing weighs about 40 ounces. That's a lot of weight to slam down if you were to drop this thing. You could put this out of commission if you dropped it hard enough. Semi-automatic, probably not. It could take a lot more abuse without getting messed up and going out of battery. I mean, that's basically what they were designed to do. So definitely a little bit more durability with that. Next thing is going to be easier to shoot accurately for a beginner. Now I said that the revolver is definitely going to be easier for the beginner to pick up and learn how to use, just a few simple buttons, point and shoot. However, to shoot accurately, it's going to be a lot easier with even a 45, and certainly a 45 versus a 357. A lot easier to shoot accurately with the 45. The next thing here is longevity of the handguns. If you do intend on shooting all 357 mag, or mostly 357 Magnum, this will handle it just fine. But overall, you're talking a 45, the max pressure is 21,000 psi versus 35,000. Huge difference in pressure. So when you're talking about shooting lots and lots and lots and lots of ammo, your gun, your 45, is just able to handle a lot of round count. And this is going to be true in any semi-automatic pistol when you're talking 45 versus, let's say, 9mm or something like that, or 45 versus 40. Your round count is going to take a lot less abuse with a 45. The pressure is barely above a 38 special. It's 21,000. You can shoot forever with this. I would not want to shoot forever and ever and ever with 357 Magnums. But that goes in one last thing here. I mentioned it before. 357 Magnum, shoot 38s in it. The 45 has really no other options. You got to shoot 45s in it. So basically, that's the rundown between. Most of this is going to be semi-auto versus revolver, but a good deal of it does have to do specifically with 357 Magnum versus 45. You got two cartridges that are known fight stoppers, known man stoppers. Pretty similar results on paper, pretty similar results as far as stopping power, but very significantly different. And I just kind of ran down some of the differences between 357 Magnum and 45 auto and full-size handguns. So that's what you get. That's my point of view. That's basically all I can think of tonight. So there it is. Tell me what you think, comment, share, like, and as always, thanks for watching.